Hi, I'm Dr. Dan Cooper, professor of pediatrics here at UCI and associate director of our Institute for Clinical and Translational Science, which is our CTSA hub. In the current FOA for the CTSA Awards, NCATS has spent a great deal of effort delineating what they mean by clinical translational science and clinical translational research and trying to distinguish these two efforts. So in our effort to begin a discussion both here at our own campus and community and nationally, we've reached out to a number of faculty at varying degrees of career development, spanning from early career investigators to more senior level directors and faculty, to ask them about the NCATS vision and their own vision of what clinical translational science and clinical translational research actually mean. In the following video, you'll see a brief snapshot of some impressions of these terms that stemmed from a longer set of interviews that we conducted. I think you'll find that there are some very thoughtful, interesting, and provocative ideas, and we hope that this will spur a discussion across the country to help us and NCATS better understand and define these essential terms. We're very interested in your thoughts and feedback, and we hope you enjoy this discussion. Thank you in advance.
Brennan and Chancellor's Professor in Departments of Psychiatry and Human Behavior.
I'm a professor in physical medicine and rehabilitation and anatomy and neurobiology, and I am the director of the Sue and Bill Gross Stem Cell Research Center.
My current laboratory looks at chronic inflammation in both type 2 diabetes and polycystic ovary syndrome with the intention of discovering immune pathways that we could use for immunotherapy.
My training is as a basic scientist. I got my PhD in physiology.
Chair of Pediatrics at University of California, Irvine, and I'm pediatrician in chief at CHOC, Children's Hospital of Orange County.
Some people refer to themselves as translational scientists, and some others see themselves as translational researchers. Do you see a difference in these constructs and how this differentiation could actually impact or improve healthcare?
I see no difference between those two. I think translational researchers are scientists, and they are as much scientists as the basic science people. They have to understand the research methodology. They have to understand how to ask the question in a way to get useful information. They are scientists.
I find that very interesting of a question, right? I feel like when we try to figure out who is basic scientist and who's clinical scientist, it's kind of very clear, and people have a really easy time defining themselves as such. When it comes to translational science, like there's people like me who I feel like I'm right at the edge of calling myself a translational scientist, but I don't really identify as being one, even though my work, it's translationally relevant, right?
If you said that somebody's a translational researcher versus a translational scientist, I think those terms are very much overlapping. And I don't like to imply that translational researchers aren't scientists. So, but by making that distinction when you're talking about people that do the work, then I think you're potentially making it sound like translational researchers aren't really scientists, and that is false.
At least from my perspective, when I think of translational science, is I'm taking science that I've learned, and then I'm at the point of using what I've learned to translate that into the clinic. And then that is like the threshold over which I'd say, okay, we're doing translational science. So I think a broad use of the term translational research is a lot more inviting and welcoming to people of, I guess, all I don't know, experiences, backgrounds, whatever their training is. And that this is something that you come into and go out of, right? But then I could see how using the term translational scientist as being a way that's limiting, and maybe scientists who aren't currently doing translational science wouldn't see themselves in that role or pursue, say, like finances that would support them doing that, because there's a definition of what a translational scientist is, as opposed to anyone can do translational research, as long as that project and what they're finding is, basically fits in that definition. of having applicability to the clinic.
I'm going to read you a statement and I want you to interpret it for me.
Okay.
Translational research endeavors require the expertise of multiple people and groups, particularly as the research is carried across through different phases of the translational science spectrum. Does this statement make it clear that translational research and translational science are different from one another?
No.
Well, I don't know
Or
about
do you
that.
think, the two are too interlocking?
I
that-
really think those are pretty intertwined.
Okay.
I mean, I guess it depends on how that's defined. If it's, again, if it's somewhat focused on a particular problem or particular disease, you might think of that more as translational research. And if it was much more broad to multiple disease programs, or, you know, much broader, right, focus, than that might be translational science and the study even of how to do translational research.
Still murky for me as you word it.
No, I don't see how you can do something that's translational and not have multiple disciplines and people involved. Like, there's no way it's going to move forward and be translatable to the clinic if you only have one expertise. Like, I mean, at minimum, you need someone who's really good at like the basic science and someone who's like an MD and great with like the patients, right? If you want to enroll people into studies, you need good clinical coordinators, and you need like your nurses team. So I don't see how you can do translational research or science without that being the case.
Translation, the word translation. So NCATS, which is the National Center for Advancing Translational Science, defines this as the process of turning observations in the laboratory, clinic, and community into interventions that improve the health of individuals and communities, from diagnostics, preventions, and treatments to medical procedures and behavioral changes. So that's how NCATS defines translation. They go on to define translational research in the following way. It's the endeavor to traverse a particular step of the translational process for a particular target or a particular disease. Okay. And translational science, they define as the field of investigation that's focused on understanding the scientific and operational principles underlying each step of the translational process.
Yeah, because those are very, very clear definitions and they're technical. So I can see how, like, now one's like an understanding of the process and one's like the actual work, and that's how they separate it. And it's funny because as like, if I were going to come up with a definition myself, that's not what I would have come up with.
Yeah, yes, less so, but I can't say not at all. I mean, I get the distinction that they're going at, right? It's not the natural way that in my head as a cell biologist, right, a stem cell biologist at this point, that would have come to me. But I get where they're going.
So the question is there enough uniqueness in this idea of studying the process of translation that you could actually call it a science, the way you would cell biology or neurobiology?
In my head, I'd rather call it something else, but I don't have an idea of what that is. Like, it doesn't resonate as that being the right word to use, if you will.
That translational science was really honed in on just getting those errors or failures that you mentioned. You're missing all the other elements of discovery and all the positive aspects of what I think are associated with translational science. It seems like a field, we're coining a field that's meant to be corrective rather than be involved in the discovery process. And
so a lot of times, of course, we use like science research synonymously when of course it's not, right?
Yes.
And that just becomes a thing. Like, as a scientist, like, oh yeah, we do science, and to us, what does doing science mean? It means doing research.
Yeah, that makes total sense. That's kind of how I was thinking about it, with focused versus broader. But yeah, that makes sense.
So you buy that?
I buy that.
Are those separate people doing those things?
They can be, and they may not be. I mean, I think there's significant overlap in that, but because you could have people that are on focus problems also be addressing that broader field.
Mhm.
And likewise, people that are addressing the broader field may also be working on a focused project.
Are these definitions useful, do you think, in the enterprise of improving health?
Not that much, maybe.